What's up guys, Jack here, and today we're going to be talking about the most notorious man in MMA, the guy who blew up the sport, the most famous man in combat sport, Conor McGregor. Now he's been in a lot of the news lately because we talked about on the channel of maybe him getting past that USADA clause where he has to wait 6 months, and that there's a possibility that he could fight literally any time. But the question that everybody's been dying to know ever since he broke his leg is, who is he going to return against? Now there's a whole lot of options, and look, I don't want to waste any more time, but also we're almost at 100 subs, so thank you guys for the support. And if you guys could just, maybe get us to 100 subs before the end of the year, that would be amazing. Thank you guys for everything. Honorable mention. Man, I had a top 5 list. I didn't know who to get rid of, so I just wanted to mention this idea. So for this, let me preface this by giving you the featherweight division history. There's been only 4 champions in the UFC featherweight division. Only 4. Jose Aldo, and then Jose Aldo was beaten by Conor. Then Conor vacated the belt, and then Jose won it again, and Jose was beat by Max Holloway. And as we all know, Max Holloway was then beaten by Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski being the current 145-pound champion. And both Conor and Alex have something in common in that they beat both Jose and Max, making them the only 2 champions that haven't fought each other. Let's find out who the greatest featherweight of all time truly is. I mean, in my opinion, it's Jose Aldo, but let's talk about in terms of record. I mean, when you look at Conor beat Jose, obviously that's nowhere near comparable. Alex beat Jose, but if you look at how Alex beat Max Holloway in the last fight, it is nothing compared to how Conor beat him in his fight. There's no chance he's getting a 145. We're lucky if he makes 155. So I say, hey, look, if Alex beats Islam in March, how cool would it be to have Alexander Volkanovski versus Conor McGregor? Obviously, Conor would have the size advantage, so it wouldn't be so in Alexander Volkanovski's favor. I think that's a fight that doesn't get tossed around enough. Also, before I get into the real list, I forgot to mention, I'm not going to talk about any fighters that are cut from the UFC or not in the UFC anymore, or just kind of dream fights that are like literally never gonna happen. So that's the reason I mentioned this, is because obviously everyone's number one would be Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz isn't currently in the UFC, and he might never even come back, so I'm not gonna include him on this list, but he would be my number one if so. Now the next option would be the former lightweight champion, which it pains me to say the word former, but Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira obviously coming off of the loss to Islam Makhachev. Oliveira, yes, was destroying dudes, 12-fight win streak, but the guy was always getting dropped, and Conor still hits hard, so it was always like, hey, could Conor perhaps finish Charles Oliveira? But now that Charles lost, I think this fight makes a lot of sense. I mean, Charles Oliveira is a guy who goes out there and finishes and fights, and so is Conor. This fight is going to be amazing if it ever happens. But 155, Oliveira versus McGregor, that fight would be absolutely insane. Conor would have been ready in Brazil. That would have been a perfect main event. So yeah, I'm gonna say for number 5, Charles Oliveira. Tony Ferguson, El Cucuy, coming off of a 4-fight win streak about. He lost to Justin Gaethje, Oliveira, and as of late, Nate Diaz. I don't want to say that Tony and McGregor are in the same state as their career, because Conor has lost to guys higher than Dustin has lost. I don't want to say that they're at a similar stage, because Conor has lost to Dustin Poirier, which is like the number 1 contender, and Tony has lost to like countless guys. But this was a fight that was going to happen long ago when Tony was the interim champion and Conor was the lightweight champion and just didn't defend the belt. And look, no matter how you look at it, I mean, Tony and Conor are both nowhere near title contention. And Tony Ferguson is a legend. I mean, this fight would just be crazy. The two have been beefing for years. You see them already going back and forth on Twitter. Even today they were. I say you give it to Tony Ferguson. That'll be a hell of a fight. Number 3, we're talking the BMF, Jorge Masvidal. Now look, Jorge, similarly to a lot of the guys that I've mentioned, he's been on a losing streak. I mean, he lost to Kobe, he lost to... And Jorge is a guy that is going to play to McGregor's best strength, which is striking. I mean, look, both these guys are strikers. You're not going to see them shooting for takedowns in this fight. Plus, you could already have that built-in beef. I mean, the two have been talking shit forever. I mean, remember when Conor was talking shit about Masvidal back in 2020? I mean, tell me not. That fight would be absolutely insane. Especially, I mean, Jorge Masvidal and Conor McGregor are the biggest superstars in the sport right now. They're both in very similar stages. There's no better time to make that fight than right now. Number 2 was someone that I didn't even have on my list until a few days ago, and that's Dustin Poirier. Now, there's no real explanation needed, but let me get into it anyway for those of you that don't know. Conor beat Dustin in 2014 at featherweight, knocked him out in the first round. Flash forward 6 years or later or so, Conor rematches Dustin in Abu Dhabi and does well early on, but because of the calf kicks, Conor loses the fight, gets knocked out by Dustin. Beautiful performance by Dustin and mix it up so well. About 6 months later, we get the trilogy: Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier 3. The first round is a great round. I mean, you see Conor throwing spinning kick, fighting kind of how he used to fight, but Dustin just takes him down, ground and pounds him. They get back to the feet, and Conor breaks his leg because all he did was pivot on a punch. Obviously, look, you have that amazing post-fight interview where Conor's screaming at Dustin that's been memed so many times. That fight would be a fourth fight. Let's get it down. In my opinion, the score is 1-1-1. You can't really count that last one. So I think you do this for the fourth time. There's a lot of bad blood from both sides, so I think that fight is what should happen. And honestly, it was almost my number one because I honestly really am excited to end that rivalry. But my number one pick, Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler, look, the guy went to the UFC. He began it in early 2021, knocked out Dan Hooker, immediately fought for a title, had a fight of the night performance against Justin Gaethje. The guy brings it every single time. And he isn't one of those guys that are necessarily at the highest level. I mean, he did do good against Dustin, almost winning the fight. I mean, he was basically winning the first round until he got dropped, dominated that second round, and it seemed like to have gassed out in that third round. And Chandler is a guy, I mean, he has not had a boring fight in the UFC. His UFC career has probably been one of the best if you're talking the first 5 fights. And look, and this isn't a new idea. I mean, Michael Chandler's been calling out Conor McGregor since 2021, had that amazing call out last May. Like, I think Michael heals up from that last fight with Dustin. We get this fight for International Fight Week, July. I'd hope earlier because I want to see McGregor back, but probably International Fight Week is probably when we're going to see Conor. But who do you want to see fight Conor McGregor next? I mean, there's so many options. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like if you did, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next.